Well, I think it is just about time to start. So following the Zoom room slide that I have up, we'd like to welcome you at OLC and thank you for joining us today. Thank you all also for introducing yourselves. It's always fun to see that activity, and continue to use the chat room with questions. Also, do not be afraid to open up your mic. You can use the raise your hand control if you like. This is a coffee talk. It's a casual session here, and we're so happy to have Christopher with us. Let's continue. And we do need to thank our sponsors that you can see on our board, and especially D2L, who is hosting our coffee talk today. Thank you. So we wouldn't be able to do these great events without our sponsors. And one more thank you. And so I will now turn this over to Christopher. We have just about 30 minutes. You can let us know, Christopher, when you're ready for open mics, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. It's good to see so many folks showing up for a coffee talk, for a coffee chat. I'm going to share my screen real quickly here, and hopefully it'll work. Got the right screen. Okay, you probably see my Zoom. All right, you should see my slide deck. I'm seeing a nod there, great. So again, I'm Chris Sessoms. I'm Director of Academic Affairs at D2L, the creators of the Brightspace Learning Platform. And I want to welcome you to our coffee talk today at OLC, and we're going to focus on turning a book into a movie, how to create a meaningful learning experience online. So I want to get things started with a quick story, and then I want to hear from you, our audience, to get your thoughts and reactions to 3 or 4 questions I've got queued up here in my slides. And that was my plan. We've got, like I said, a quick half hour. So if that sounds all right, if you can give me a thumbs up or a +1 in the comments, let me know if that's acceptable to you, and then we'll just go forward. So again, please don't be shy. I figured you were here because you're interested in sharing your thoughts. So that's the plan. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward here. So I can tell you that I'm happy to say that I've worked in the front lines of higher education for about 20 years before I came to D2L. And most professors I know like teaching face-to-face. It's what they signed up for. And it's a chance to get closer to learners, a chance to pass on critical knowledge and information, practices and skills. Teaching is a part of an indoctrination process and a preparation for what comes next for our students, right? And most professors I know like to engage with students, but are having difficulty making the adjustment to teaching and learning online. They're looking for ways to take what they did face-to-face and do the same online. In essence, they're making their stage show into a movie in many ways. Now, originally, the motion picture industry was made this way. It was basically filming what was on stage, and it was a facsimile, right, of what folks were seeing on stage, and just they put it in a motion picture. And motion picture industry and filmmakers didn't quite figure out that they could move the camera around. They could zoom in, they could zoom out, tilt, pan, splice different pieces of film together to create an entirely new narrative and a whole new storytelling experience. So I like to think about transitioning from a physical classroom teaching to online teaching using a similar metaphor of transitioning from a book to a movie. It's a way to reimagine and rethink about the many ways we can reconfigure the learning experience. So I really am curious to hear from you all, to hear what you think. What guided you when you moved your course online? And I'm assuming most folks here have some experience with online learning. And if you have, what are some of the metaphors that best describe your experience? I'd love to hear from you. And feel free, just take your off mute, your mic off mute, and feel free to jump in. I'm sure some of you have an idea of a way you would describe that, your transition to online. Was it
Hi,
taking a,
Chris.
yes, please.
Hi. I don't know, but my your metaphor sounds more interesting than mine. But I was thinking maybe turning an activity or an exercise into a game. I don't know. We're doing a lot of that now, and I think we're trying to bring the edutainment factor into the whole process to keep the students interested. So I'm not sure about my metaphor, but here you go. One to think about.
That is one to think about. Thank you, Karine. And thinking about making it into a game. That's a great metaphor for thinking about a course learning experience. It could be quite an interesting way to frame how you might think about that. Anybody else have any ideas you'd like to share?
There are a few comments in chat. We have one that says teaching online is like a crap game in the sense that it is a gamble and a game of chance if the student will connect and points achieved.
Oh boy, a chance and a gamble. Are there other comments in the chat?
Yes. Jay Carter says that as an instructional designer, they support online faculty.
Gotcha. Well, it's interesting to think of it as a bit of a gamble. You know, it is a tremendous risk moving online. And I will tell you, having taught for many years and worked with many faculty members around the globe, one thing I found that we all share in common, that is people that teach, is that we're pretty close to perfectionists. We like to do things perfectly. We don't like to go out and make mistakes, make errors, especially in front of other people. Which is kind of tough, especially when you're adopting a new medium like moving online, from going from face-to-face teaching in a physical classroom, going online. There's so many choices, so many decisions to make. It can feel like a bit of a chance and a bit of a gamble. And in the world that I came from in higher ed, I would call that gamble and that risk and that chance an experiment. So the way that I would often think about what I do, and my kids will tell you the same, it's like I kind of look at it like an experiment, like it is a bit of a risk. It is a bit of a chance that I'm inviting students in, trying to create a more engaging environment online like I used to do in my face-to-face class. And it's not necessarily easy. All right, before I move on, is there anybody else have any other metaphors or any comments about things that they've thought about when they've moved, what guided you when you moved your course online?
Chris, do you think we are thinking about things as if we are in a parallel universe? Like one day we are face to face and now we're exploring the same thing from a completely different angle. Like we're resuming our lives, but we're different teachers, different ways for students to handle their sessions. That we can see ourselves as if we're not the same person, and what we're doing definitely is the same, but in a completely different way. So parallel universe, maybe.
I like that. That's a very interesting way to frame that. Joan, is there something you were going to add? Oh, you're on mute, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Well, I wrote something in the chat box, but I'll say it here. Teaching online is like a virtual stage. You can reinvent yourself if you feel like you are a more reserved person and you're a little bit shy teaching in front of people. You have a virtual stage and a barrier, you know, and you can smell like shrimp scampi. No one cares. It's just you can, you know, you can be funny. And you don't have anyone right there, you know, like unless they're live and can talk back to you, but you can pretty much, you know, do things that you probably wouldn't do in person. Maybe you can come out of your shell a bit more. So I say it's like a virtual stage, and I'm not in Germany right now, but I can make it look like I am.
That's
So
true.
we can just look at it as faculty, I'm a professor. So I think I just look at it as a fun thing, you know, like, I don't know. That's how I look at it. But I was just going to write in the chat box, but hey, hi.
Well, thanks, Joan, for coming off mute
Well,
and
you're
joining us.
Thank you. I love your session.
Oh,
And everyone collaborating. I love this stuff. Thank you.
well, thank you. No, it wouldn't work unless you came. Yes, somebody else has a comment. I'm sorry.
I had a thought that, and I moved my course online quite a few years ago, so not during the time of COVID, but if I think back on it, I felt like I switched from drawing people in, like drawing them into my class, to sending them out. So I tried to make lots of activities for them to go out and do, and then they would still come back and talk about it online, but it was, the active learning didn't happen all together. The active learning kind of happened for them out in the field, and then they'd come back and reflect.
Very nice, very nice. And where do you teach, Heidi? And what topic?
Oh, at the time I was teaching at State College of Florida. I'm at University of South Florida now, but it was, I teach a variety of topics, but career explorations was one that comes to mind that worked really well for that. Also study skills. I did some of the beginning, like college freshman SLS courses.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, and having students go out and into the work, essentially using the online space to go out and bring back the work that you've asked them to do. Assignments can be very much tied to the real world in a different way than maybe it feels like sometimes in a physical classroom. It's an interesting experience to note. One of the things I'm very curious about when thinking about making your course engaging, right? And connecting with learners, we have a myriad of tools, right? We are able to do groups and online, and we can use synchronous audio tools or video tools, or even asynchronous tools that allow us to work independently or off calendar, discussion boards and the like. I'm curious for folks here that are teaching online, how are you thinking about what activities do you find the most engaging? Which ones allow you to connect with your learners most? I'm curious to hear what you're thinking. In that online space, when we're trying to, I don't want to say replicate what we were doing face to face, but in an effort to support learning the way we used to support learning, how are you connecting with learners? I'm curious to hear what folks are doing. There's no right or wrong answers here, so please feel free to take yourself off mute and share.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a little bit different for us because we've always been remote online.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. I come to this conference hoping that I can find other people to collaborate with. So I'm with WGU, Western Governors University, and
Fantastic.
we are competency based.
Yes.
So
yes,
my fear is that, I hope we're engaging learners appropriately, because I hope they're finding the content meaningful. And a lot of it is, asynchronous. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not
Mm-hmm.
sure sometimes. But it's really interesting to hear how other people are trying to make it more engaging. And in an earlier session, I can't remember which one it was, but this lady was talking about how interactive learning is engaging at some times, but
Mm-hmm.
just because you think it's interactive and engaging doesn't mean that it is interactive and engaging to your learner. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the hey, because you have to click one box or the other, it's interactive and engaging. So I think one way we do it is by having mentors that a student always has to check in with, and kind of give checkpoints on how they're doing with engagement.
That makes sense. No, that's a terrific way to do that. One of the things that's very curious, I like how you frame this. It's we are often not sure what learners are up to, or if they're satisfied, or if we're making connections. And one of the things that I've been advocating for, and it's one of those scalar things. Like, can you scale this? And I'm thinking, you can, but it's going to might take a little effort, especially if you're teaching 1,000 students. But is asking your students, hey, is this connecting? Do any of you do, for example, like a midterm evaluation where you ask students, hey, is anything connecting? Is this working? Is there anything you need me to review again that you're not sure? I'm just curious if people have used that before, and how you found that. Was it effective, not effective?
Chris, we have one comment on that. They say that they do exit tickets at the end of a module.
Mm-hmm.
And another, Angela says that she sends a first quarter message to individual learners. And she says that's been super effective.
I
Angela
bet.
Gibson. Thank you.
I bet. The exit ticket. The person who had the comment about an exit ticket, I would love if you could tell us, if you could come off mute and tell us a little bit about what is an exit ticket and how that works.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes. Thanks for joining.
Hi, I'm the one who posted about the exit ticket. So basically, what I do is I ask learners what went well, what didn't go well in the module or live session, depending on the situation. One way I can help them as an instructor, and then I might pop in a question about the topic to see if they give me the right answer or an answer that shows they were in the class. And this helps me evaluate the module that I created or the live session or whatever the case, so that I know what's landing and what's not, what students are learning and what they're not. So that's how I use it.
Is it Micah?
It's Mika.
Mika, my apologies, Mika.
Oh, no worries.
How are you how are you getting the tickets? Are you asking via email, or is there a way somewhere in the course they're posting?
So what I generally do is I'll create a survey depending on what school I'm teaching for, creating it for. Sometimes I'll use, Google. Sometimes I'll use, there's a quiz form type thing in 360. Jot Forms has it, or you can use a survey in Blackboard, whatever the case is. And I try to make sure it's anonymous so students know that their feedback is valuable, but I don't necessarily need to know that they really disliked a section or whatever the case is. They don't feel like they're going to be penalized.
Fantastic. No, that makes a lot of sense. And do you find that's effective for, do you get feedback from students so that they appreciate that, or they're noticing your responsiveness? Or
in the online space, I don't get as much feedback about if students kind of appreciate the changes. In face-to-face classes, I would do like a fishbowl, or I would bring in a hat or something and have students kind of give me quick feedback that way. Honestly, students have not told me that it works for them or doesn't work for them, but it's made me more attuned to their potential needs. So
I think that's important, as equally as important. I know sometimes students have a difficulty when I tell them, sort of look them in the eye, so to speak, online and go, tell me, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And they sometimes are taken aback because that's not common. It's not something they're used to experiencing in a classroom. The professor genuinely concerned about how they're doing and whether the work is resonating with them. So I understand some of their trepidation at first. And for me, part of what I found is really important is at the beginning of the semester is to try to establish a community real quick, right off the bat, to let students know, here's the ground rules that we have for this course. That is, I'm expecting you to be engaged. I'm expecting you to respond to surveys and those kinds of prompts that I provide, so I can better understand where they are and adjust my teaching as necessary. And I think that sometimes catches students off a little bit. They're not exactly sure about that. So I'm going to move forward here. I have another question for folks, and feel free to comment on any of these questions at any point. If there's something that you'd like to circle back on, please feel free to do so. But one of the things I'm always anxious to learn is, when you first went online and where you are now, you probably learned a lot in that process when you first started out to where you are today. I would love to know from you, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started out? And similarly, what advice would you give somebody who's just getting started out online? I know there's a lot of good, smart teachers in this room, so I would love to get any advice you'd be willing to share. Again, no right or wrong answers here. This is just coffee talk. Joan, go ahead.
What? Oh, I just came off video and just to say hi. But I guess I would have to say, know your servers. I'm in Pennsylvania in the mountains, but we're in a valley. we're in the mountains, but we're in a valley.
Gotcha.
And the servers in our community college are less than optimal for everyone uploading and streaming and everything. So I think people have to, we use Blackboard Learn and we use Collaborate. However, and Zoom, we did use Zoom. However, Zoom was hacked into during one of our big meetings, and the president of the college had someone Zoom in, hacked in, and it was not pleasant. So, but the Collaborate through Blackboard and our servers sometimes do not mesh together properly. And so the teachers and the faculty and the students, they get all nervous because they think it's their machine, and they keep clicking and clicking and clicking, and it just confuses their machines more and more. So just know that sometimes it's just the internet or the servers, perhaps your home or where you're trying to upload to, like a college or something. And so I don't think that people understood that.
You're probably right. That makes a lot of sense.
The students start freaking out when things are frozen, and you know, they think they did something wrong. That's the first thing. So I don't know. That's what I would say.
That's some good advice. Know your servers.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
There are a few comments in the chat.
Yes, Laurie.
Green says that online time is not equivalent to face-to-face time. Another comment, make space for the learner and for you, the instructor, create reflection and downtime.
Oh, I like it.
And John says, know where your audience are based.
Know where your audience is based. I'd love to hear from any of those commenters a little bit more about that. For example, John, tell me, can you explicate a little bit more about what you mean by know where your audience is?
Sure. Certainly in our own experience, we have a lot of students who are based in China, and the issues that may come with, particularly if you're online. And what works, what does not work over there, because you plan ahead and you think, well, I know what we all want to use, but unfortunately then it doesn't work in certain places in the world. So we have a lot of international students, so that's the perspective that I'm coming from in that regard.
Gotcha. Oh, that's important too. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, Laurie, go ahead.
There is another comment in here from Stephen, and he says that this has forced him to transition to online teaching, giving him an opportunity to step back and reconsider my course. What are my objectives? Am I meeting those objectives? Are the lectures and homework assignments useful in providing students with the right feedback? It's given him a chance to learn about new technology that he will use in the future, even in face-to-face settings.
Well, that's fantastic, Stephen. Thank you for sharing that. You know, one of my questions that I was going to ask that I then pulled, thinking we had a limited amount, we have a limited amount of time, is just that. In what ways did your online course dramatically or change from your face-to-face course? You know, what are you doing differently online that you never imagined you'd be doing in an online setting? I don't know if that came out right, but you know, for those of you that switch from physical classroom to face-to-face, did you notice? I mean, it sounds like in Stephen's case, he's catching himself doing some reflection and thinking a little bit harder about his the learning objectives and how he's asking students to accomplish those. Does anybody else have similar experiences making that transition and rethinking? And there was a comment earlier about reflection as well. I would love for folks for that commenter to talk a little bit more about when they talk about that critical reflection, which I think is so important. Would love to have you share.
Hi, this is Angela Gibson. Can you hear me?
I can, Angela. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks. This is nice. Thank you very much. The point about reflection and space for downtime, as well as I wanted to add, you know, just time for the student to learn, I think is important for us as individuals who are designing the courses, as well as instructing the courses, and those who are learning in the courses. One thing that I found, and I had started in online learning way back, we won't discuss the years. However, when I found it then, and I find it now, and I find it when I'm working and mentoring and training faculty and designers for the transition to online or blended or high flex or hybrid, is that it feels like everything's being crammed in. And I'm noticing this at, especially for my own son in K-12, when they transitioned over, and even this fall semester, and leaving time, purposeful time for reflection, and not necessarily like, okay, now create a reflection essay, because sometimes that just is one of the many tasks they have to do that week. But what kind of opportunities do we have for reflection and leaving that space open asynchronously or synchronously for learners, as well as some downtime for students, and building in time for, okay, you know what, I really think we have a big project coming up and maybe you need to take some time to work on it. And even though I know, and I won't say this out loud to them, is many of you will wait till the last minute, that maybe you need a little space for this, and maybe even build in some check-in points. For example, I have a class I contacted all the students and I said, I'd like to make a change in the schedule and give you this extra period of time right before our big presentation that was coming up. And I said, but what I'd like you to do, first of all, I wanted everyone to agree to it, even though it was for their benefit. That was important to me that they all said yes. And then I said, but I want you to check in with me. And that could be a quick message. It could be asking for a phone call. It could be asking for a live video conference. But just, hey, during this space that I've given you, these, extra 6-7 days for, moving this forward a bit in the timeline, I just want to know what questions you have and how you're doing. And so that's sort of a backhanded way of saying, maybe you should be working on it a little bit, but also given space. So that's what I was looking at.
I like that, Angela. It's a bit of a, you're right. And the comment earlier about time is different online. When I first got into online teaching and learning, I noticed it allowed me to rethink time and space, literally, about how am I going to run my course and what I'm going to ask students to do. And I think all of us have found, those of us that are working remotely now, working from home, have found that since we're not commuting, we're spending probably more time working than we ever did, ever now. So it is good to build in some time to breathe, build in some time to take a walk, build in some time to just sort of, give yourself a little break, because it's just, life changed. We're definitely changed. And Laurie, I see you're back up. I'm guessing we have a few minutes left.
We are approaching the end of our session. So I've put some housekeeping items, several links into the chat. We value your session evaluations. We'd like to know how you're liking the different programs that we have for you. So please complete a session evaluation for each program that you attend. We also have on OLC Live the ability to nominate someone to be interviewed. If there's a conference attendee that you think is dynamic or your favorite presentation speaker, nominate them. That is the second link. And finally, we love our volunteers. We rely on them. We'd love to have you join our team of volunteers. And I've given you a link there also that you can show us your areas of interest. So Chris, I will let you say your final remarks. Thank you so much for your presentation today. This was a really interesting session.
Well, thank you, Laurie, and thank you everybody for coming today. And I appreciate that opportunity for folks to just share what you're thinking. This is why I love OLC so much. Frankly, Angela was just commenting about, she's been doing this for a long time, didn't want to admit it. I've been doing online learning since I feel like the earth was cooling. And I started coming to this conference when it was called the Sloan C Conference down in Orlando, which I really, really valued, because it would be, we were all in the same tribe. I felt like we were all people experimenting with online learning, and I think we're all still experimenting with online learning. So I tend to shy away from people who call themselves an expert in any particular area, especially online learning, because there's so much to learn that we're always continuously learning, and that's kind of the role I put myself in, to always be learning. always take time to listen to other people and hear what they've learned along the way, because I think together that's where we really grow, and that's where the learning takes place. So thanks everybody for showing up this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of OLC, and I hope to see you online.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.